Hey, how you doing? This is Shawn. I recently just passed the PMP exam, and I want to share some of the things I learned and what I did, hoping that it can help somebody else out there. So, in this video, I will it will be about my approach of how I practice solving PMP related questions on the exam using the DIG.CIV approach and a memory jogger tool that I created called gaps analysis. Because, in my opinion, every question on the exam starts off with a problem. And I felt that this gap analysis tool was a way to solve problems. Because a lot of the questions are going to say, as a PM, what should you do next or first given this situation? Or what you should do or update first, and what you should do or update when X or Y happens, or what you should have done to prevent or avoid or address this issue. What should you consult or review? What should you have followed? What should you do given this scenario? That's what a lot of the questions I saw. So I um, seen that it was a problem thing. Once I realized that PM project manager is really there to solve problems, conflicts, disagreements, issues, gaps, variances, differences. That's when I made the connection with this thing I call gap analysis, and how all those gaps, when analyzed, are really just information or work performance information. And then that's when I knew I can use the DIG.CIV approach to solve most of all of the project management problems. So what I did was created my own tool called gaps analysis, really to just help me jog my memory, to help me to reveal and solve and close all gap related problems and issues. And once I really understood this GAPS philosophy, I was able to relate everything through the risk register and make the connection to the risk register, to the change, getting a change request, to getting it approved, to going into direct and monitor control project work, to producing that deliverable once you had the change request approved, to verifying that deliverable in control quality process group or process, all the way to having a customer validate the scope, and once they accept it, to going all the way to closing. It helped me navigate the PMBOK a lot easier, and it allowed me just to really make that connection with the risk register. So here I want to quickly try to show you how I seen the gaps, um, which I call the gaps analysis, like I said, to solve problems related to the risk or issues. So the G, to me, I used it for gathering data or generating ideas to define a problem, which is the identify risk portion within the risk register. So the mnemonic that I use for generating data, which is data gathering, I use this BIF right here. If you can see in the red, B stands for brainstorming, I stands for interviews, F stands for facilitation, and then I created another B when I expanded it. You can build these mnemonics how you like, but I use B for benchmarking, which is another just a way of comparing something that already exists out there. It could be financial data, whatever, and to generate new ideas, to generate ideas to define a problem. And then I used the C, the two C's over here, and kept building it. And these C's represent checklists and check sheets, which are another way to gather data. And then the A is for analyzing impact using qualitative risk analysis and quantitative risk analysis tools and techniques. So those help me to solve and analyze the impacts. Then I use the PS, also the PS for proposing recommended solutions and to plan risk response strategies. So the PS is for proposing recommended solutions, and or you can say it's for planning risk response strategies, which is the after quantitative analysis. Once you do qualitative analysis and you basically prioritize the risks that are going to move to further analysis quantitatively, then you move to planning your risk response strategies, such as avoidance strategy, or which would be making a correction to the plan, or various other strategies. Then once that, you will submit your change request after you meet with your team and propose a strategy with your team. Then you will go ahead and basically submit a change request to the change control board at the end of it. So here's another one that I use, which is the DIG.CIV approach, which Phil has talked about, and as I believe this one is a tool used in qualitative analysis. So the DIG.CIV for the D is just for data gathering. So here we have data gathering using the same BIF, which I just already said the mnemonic for the two B's, the IF, CC, and these are basically, like, again, to define the problem in the risk register. So this is the risk register section for identifying risk. That's how I've seen it. And the I for impact analysis, which you'll use alternative analysis. You can use root cause analysis, document analysis, regression analysis. You can use trend analysis and variance analysis. This thing, Dr. TV, I like to call, is really only used in monitor and controlling process group area and closing, especially the DR is used in closing. Know how there's initiating, you go through planning, you go through executing and monitor and controlling project work, and then closing. So the DER is mainly for that, and I consider that, of course, in the risk register as the qualitative risk analysis portion. And then for the G for the DIG.CIV approach, G is for generating solutions or generating ideas using quantitative analysis. This is where you're calculating the values. The EMV, using Monte Carlo simulation, etc. So that's the quantitative risk analysis portion. And then the C over here is for choosing a solution. And this is where you propose a recommended solution to the change control board for a change request. And then and that's for the plan risk response strategy section within the risk register. And then the I is for the implement risk response. So once basically the change control board, once you meet with your team and then send the change request or propose a solution and submit the change request to the change control board, and the change control board approves it, then now you have to implement the risk response, right? The risk action owner will implement the risk response. So this would be part of the same risk register. This is the implement risk response area within the register. And also Then next, you would go into, of course, you would produce a deliverable and direct and manage project work once the approved change request was given by the CCB. And after the risk action owner takes action, you would move on to producing the deliverable, the data, and as well as any other issues. And then once that deliverable is produced, it would be sent to be verified by the control quality team. And that's what the V stands for here. So that is the portion of how I've seen it for the DIG.CIV approach. And then once the deliverable is basically verified by the quality control team, that deliverable is submitted to the customer so that the customer validates the scope. And then once you get an approved acceptance deliverable from the customer, then it goes out to closing. So that's really the nuts and bolts of pretty much a lot of the processes. There's more different other connection points, but that's basically how I've seen a lot of it, how to solve different conflicts. And this approach, once you get in the rhythm of getting the idea on this gaps approach, you can really solve any type of conflict. I don't care if it's a disagreement, because everything's a problem. So once you really understand that, you understand the gaps and the variance, and which variance to me is really all that stuff is information. Again, I want to highlight that the SV, the schedule variance, that's information. The SPI, the schedule performance index, is information. So once you understand that when the gap is being analyzed, it is information. So that's what I did to get through my exam. I created a lot of these little mnemonics to help me remember things. I did also small little process flow charts and maps to make small connections, and then I kept expanding those connections, especially like with the stakeholder register, with stakeholder analysis, and connecting that back to the risk register. Because before you can start planning, you need to know the threshold, and those might have already been mentioned within the stakeholder, doing the identifying stakeholders process within the register. So I also had another mnemonic, just to quickly wrap up, called PET analysis, to help me remember some of the data analysis tools used for control procurement area process group or process to measure performance, in which I like to call, instead of measure performance, I like to call measure achievements, and which the PET analysis stood for. The P stood for performance reviews, the E stood for earned value analysis, and the T stood for trend analysis. So those were quickly different mnemonics that I use to help me kind of push through and then keep building and expanding. But the most important thing I want you to try to remember is to try to put a lot of these ideas about the PMBOK in your own words, and really try to understand how you might use the tool, techniques, or documents or plans for certain situations, and really lock down plans and the different components within there, within the plan. But anyhow, I'm hoping that this helps anybody out there. And remember, you can do it. All right.